Tonight we continue our series of interviews with candidates for City Council in the preliminary election on September 24th. Our guest is one of the candidates running at large. We'd like to welcome Herb Lozano. Thank you very much for being with us, Herb.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
So talk about your background. You're originally from Dorchester, now you live in Mattapan. This is your first time running, but you're not exactly a stranger to politics.
Absolutely not. As you said, I grew up in Dorchester, raised by both my parents, my mom and my dad. My mom, a woman of faith, a woman of the community, pretty much the head of the family. And my dad is a retired Boston police officer after 35 years. But I grew up in Dorchester, started out as a charter school student, later went to Catholic private school, moved on to college, and then since following my education, I've been here in the city focusing on civic engagement, city and state politics, community-wide issues, and just trying to go in and offer what I know to be successful as I reflect on myself. You know, I consider myself a product of the Boston community, and so much was afforded to me as a youth and even as a young adult. I'm able to identify those things and actually advocate for those things and do my best to pay it forward in those ways.
You've said that your interest in politics is like a calling. I know your mother would approve of that word, but when did you feel that you had that calling?
Oh, when I first started with the Boston NAACP, of course they focus on issues that impact Black and brown people as well as, you know, the residents in the community, and I began to see how I'm impacted by these issues, whether directly or indirectly. And it became more of an obligation for me to take the knowledge that I've received and the resources that I know about and share them into the community, because I realized that everyone's not as civically engaged as I am. Everyone doesn't know how to navigate the different systems of our city. Everyone doesn't understand the political process. So then I began to see it as an obligation, and then more folks from the community, my mentors, advisors, different community leaders said, hey, I think you have a real role, you know, in the political arena here in this city. And once you hear it over and over again, you know, you have to think that there's some truth to it. So I dived in with both feet, and I haven't looked back since.
Well, if you're going around the city looking for votes, one of the first things you got to do is tell people why it matters to have you on the council. I mean, if they got a concern, you know, why is it important that you be the one taking care of it?
Well, I think it's important to have someone on the council who not only knows the issues, but someone who lives the issues. I think you're able to speak to these different issues and some of the solutions that can be put into place from a first-hand perspective. And I think that that's very necessary. Also, to have someone with new ideas, someone that's innovative, someone that's hands-on, even someone that has fresh legs. I mean, I'm running at large. So we have to cover the entire city of Boston. So there are a lot of different organizations, there are a lot of different agencies, there are a lot of residents who want someone that's going to be hands-on and actually tackle those issues on the front line.
This is BNN News. We're talking with Herb Lozano, candidate for City Councilor at Large. Herb, there's one issue that affects practically the whole city right now. It's the cost of housing. What can an at-large councilor do about that?
I would say we can definitely develop more affordable housing. What I've been hearing on a community level is that word affordability hasn't been quite fully defined, and it doesn't reflect the majority of the city. So I think that we can look at what affordability means and how affordability can be implemented in different parts of the city. I think that we can also include our IDP percentage. We know that the BPDA requires...
That's a percentage of money set aside for affordable units, right?
Yes, it is. And I believe that number is at 13%, which is substantially low. It doesn't reflect the amounts of families and the size of families that we have in the city of Boston. And I'm also a firm believer in being proactive. So I think as the economy grows, as the cost of living grows, I think that we also have to uplift the people. So I think some workforce development will also provide some solutions as well.
I'm sure another concern for many people is, even though crime itself is not generally up, about the increase in the number of shootings in this city. What can be done locally about that?
I would say that accessibility to firearms. You know, we have a strong understanding that a lot of firearms are trafficked from outer state into our communities. I think that that's something that we can do. I think that we can change the culture within our community to get people to understand that violence is not the answer. I think we need to look at these instances and realize that there's a series of events that usually leads to a shooting or leads to a homicide. And I think that we need to grasp a hold of our youth at a very early age. I could speak to that personally. You know, someone who would be considered as an at-risk youth. You know, I was fortunate enough to not be caught in the line of fire because there were community leaders, there were programs, there were support systems in the community that kept me walking that straight and narrow and thankfully kept me out of harm's way.
What about transportation? You lived in parts of the city where that has not been working out very well.
Yes.
It's getting worse, maybe. What's the best way to do something about that?
Well, we have a growing city, and I think that all forms of transportation are necessary. Those that travel by vehicle, those that bike, those that take public transportation. I think that we need all of those things because it suits the diversity of our city very well. I'm very much in favor of the Better Bus Initiative. I realize that the MBTA is now bringing on consultants from the community to help them design bus routes even better. I think that we can increase the frequency of our buses and of our transit systems to help people get to and from their locations on time. I think that we should do more digging on our bike lanes as well. You know, I see that more folks are now using that as a means of transportation. As long as the weather calls for it here in the city of Boston, I think that our bikers should also be afforded some stake in our city transit.
One thing you have in your past is you helped young people get jobs in the building trades, where there have been, I'm sure, a long history of racial barriers. How do you see applying that to what you can do as a city councilor?
Yeah, hopefully we are able to expand, you know, this program. I've developed a community mentoring team. As you said, we prepare Boston residents as well as women and men of color to go into these different apprenticeship programs. And we piloted that program with Local 103. And the hope is that we can then extend that programming and these opportunities to some of the other trade unions. I mean, there's tons of construction happening, hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars that's being spent. And the hope is that we are then able to get folks into these different trade unions, get them working on some of these construction sites, and ultimately earn some of these dollars.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Candidate for Boston City Council on September 24th, Herb
Yes,
Lozano.
sir.
In a moment, we'll tell you about local events putting a spotlight on climate preparedness. But first, this message.